Hello and welcome back to the UCLA Bruins Insider Podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Ferguson, writer for UCLA on SI. Today we're going to be breaking down UCLA's 77-73 victory over the Washington Huskies. Kind of going over notable performances, how each player kind of performed, things that went well for UCLA, things that went wrong. But before we get started, I want to thank everyone right now who is tuned in and listening, Apple Music, Spotify, YouTube even. Those all mean a lot to me. Without further ado, let's hop right into it. We knew at entering this game that UCLA would need to put their foot on the gas pedal. Earlier this season, when both teams met, UCLA was barely able to edge out Washington 82-80. And this was the Sky Clark team back then. He had 25 points. Again, UCLA needed someone to step up to make those points in this one, and they did. They got that from Trent Perry. UCLA started out very slow in this one. I think 36-30 was the first half score. UCLA struggled at times. They would go down by 8, even 10, I believe, at one point. But still, I thought they handled it well in the second half to kind of get that momentum back, regardless of how bad the first half was. But we'll kind of get into each half and kind of what that meant. But starting off, I want to talk about some notable UCLA performances. Trent Perry, 23 points, 5 for 9 from the field, 3 for 3 from behind the arc. Again, Eric Daly Jr. had a great game, 5 for 12, 14 points, 5 rebounds. I want to see more rebounding from him, but as we get into these other players, you'll see why it was harder for him. Donovan Dent, another masterclass overall, 17 points, 5 for 16. Not the best shooting night, but he was able to make up for it with 6 rebounds and 10 assists. Then we have Tyler Bilodeau. Started off slow like most of UCLA's players, but still he was able to score 19 points, 7 for 12 from the field, 3 for 6 from the three-point line, and was able to get 3 rebounds in this one. Those were the big 4 for UCLA in this one. Without their performances, it would not have been a close game. And like I mentioned earlier this week, this was a must-win game for UCLA. So we saw how the effort kind of changed for the Bruins overall. Donovan Dent, 6 rebounds in this one. Not really expected, but still, it was huge. We needed every single one of them if we're going to win this game. Going over some more broad statistics, team comparisons, Washington shot 50% from the field. UCLA shot 41%. Washington shot 29% from the three-point line. UCLA 44%. 67% for Washington from the free throw line. 79% from UCLA. Washington shot 18 free throws. UCLA shot 29. Washington had 13 turnovers to UCLA 7. UCLA was able to capitalize with 20 points off turnovers to Washington 6. Both teams had 30 rebounds combined this game, or tied at 30 this game. UCLA had Washington had 19 defensive rebounds. UCLA had 18. So again, I thought UCLA played well in the second half, and that was kind of the reason for it. They rebounded better in the second half than I thought they did in the first half, and that was kind of the piece of the puzzle. We saw a lot of defensive breakdowns from UCLA in the first half that weren't necessarily present in the second. And again, it's frustrating to see them not be able to play a consistent, 40 minutes of basketball. But again, what can you expect? This team is, the definition of inconsistent when you kind of look at what they've done this season. Again, to round out the season, it's going to get harder for UCLA. I don't expect them to really make a lot of noise against these ranked teams, especially with a performance like this. If you go behind, 34-30 in the first half for UCLA, I don't see them, doing much better against, number 2 Michigan or number, 10 Michigan State, who just was able to knock down number 5 Illinois. And the reason I say that, I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer, but again, Washington is not, the pinnacle of Big Ten basketball. I believe they're like 12-11, somewhere around that. Not the best team. And the fact that UCLA struggled against them really speaks about, the overall, threat that UCLA poses against some of these other teams. And I don't think it's that scary. Again, obviously the Purdue win was there, but still Purdue has really struggled. I believe they won against Oregon, a team who UCLA beat by double digits by 4 points, 68-64. So we're starting to see that win kind of take a hit. So UCLA really needed to come out here and have a fully dominant performance if they wanted to be taken seriously, and I don't think they did that. Again, first half struggles were rough. We can't have offensive inconsistencies to start the game. That was a bigger problem earlier in the year that I thought UCLA had fixed. But again, in this game, it kind of was a huge reminder that UCLA can never have, that stability that we need them to have. But going off of kind of individual performance for UCLA, kind of some themes I've noticed over the last couple of games. We'll start again with Trent Perry. 23 points, 5 for 9 from the field. Again, 0 rebounds, 0 assists, 0 fouls. He played 37 minutes. I loved how he played in this game. He hit the big shots. I think he had 16 of his points in that, first half or the second half for UCLA, which was needed. I want to see him be more consistent across the board. If we could have, eight of those points in the first half, 8 in the, second half, I think that is a much more convincing Trent Perry performance. But nonetheless, I thought it was a really good game for Trent Perry. Again, setting that tone in the second half. That is kind of a theme that UCLA needs to monitor moving forward. Xavier Booker, this one really kind of hurt. 24 points. I think 10 for 11 from the field, 4 for 4 from 3. We wanted to see that version of Booker moving forward. Although I knew it probably wouldn't kind of be sustainable just because of how Booker is. Teams really didn't respect him when he was behind the arc, even though he is a 40% three-point shooter. But the threat of Booker being a scorer now meant that Washington was going to guard him more heavily. And even there were times where Booker was left wide open and he would just miss the shot. And again, that cannot happen, especially with Xavier Booker trying to be that bigger piece for UCLA. Again, a lot of his minutes, he played 24 minutes in here. I see him playing less when Sky Clark is back in the lineup because like I said, UCLA loves that 3-guard look, beat you in transition, just outpace the other team. And that's what UCLA will have with Sky Clark back. And what that means is that Xavier Booker might be pushed to the side again. He still had 7 rebounds. I thought that was great. 4 personal fouls, so there was some physicality in there. But besides his offensive struggles, I thought he had a decent defensive game. Hannes Steinbach was a player to watch in this game. In the first meeting, he had 29 points on 10 for 11 11 for 12 shooting, and it was just lights out during that game, and that really threatened UCLA hard in that one. But in this one, he had 13 points, 5 for 7 from the field, 7 rebounds, 4 personal fouls. Still not a bad game from him overall. And a lot of that can be accredited to Xavier Booker, being more physical. And I really liked that from him. There were times where he would contest the shots and, that helped UCLA go on those runs in the second half that ultimately won them the game. Not a bad Xavier Booker performance, but not the best. Again, 1 point. You can't really give flowers to that. Moving forward, I hope to see him expand on his offensive capabilities because we know he can. He set the ceiling high for himself. But again, it's just not the best game for him overall. Looking down the lineup, Donovan Dent, I thought he played incredible in here. We're trying to see him be, more aggressive as a player as a whole. He shot 8 free throws in this game. I thought that was very impressive to, draw that contact. It had Washington kind of scared. They had 3 players who had 4 fouls and also 3 players who had 3. So again, his ability to kind of dictate that, being physical in the paint, I really love to see that from Dent. He also had 6 rebounds and 10 assists. I didn't see the 6 rebounds coming in this game, but the 10 assists, I think that's right on schedule for how Dent has played. He had 2 turnovers. Again, not really the best, but still, it's a lot better than 3 or 4. So again, I thought Dent played a great game. Again, that aggressiveness is going to be a huge factor against some of the harder teams on UCLA's schedule. Illinois, Michigan, teams like that. They're not going to be able to. They will struggle if Dent plays this physical moving forward. Eric Daly Jr., he had a pretty, mundane game. I can't really say he did anything exceptional. I thought he had a few big shots late in the second half when Washington started to snip at their heels. He had 14 points, 5 for 12 from the field, 5 rebounds. I wanted to see him get a little bit more rebounds in this one. But, it's hard when, there's such a balance among UCLA starters now. Still only 30 rebounds as a team, but I really want to see Booker do more rebounding, and he has not. There was a point during UCLA's 3-game win streak against Oregon, Northwestern, and Purdue where he was averaging 7.5. But now we have not kind of seen that in a few games. But overall, I thought Booker Daly played a very good game in this one. It was balanced. Again, nothing that sticks out necessarily. But still, if he can maintain this, maybe be more effective shooting wise, I think he could be a really good piece for UCLA to round out the season. Tyler Bilodeau, 19 points, 7 for 12 from the field, 3 for 6 from the 3-point line, had 4 personal fouls and only 3 rebounds. Like Daly Jr., I expected to see him have a bigger rebounding game. I think in the last 2 games he's had like 10 plus. So we didn't see that in this one. But again, he was playing more physical. You saw him get into that foul trouble. And that kind of limited him in the second half where he played incredible. But again, there was like times where he'd be benched for 5 minutes because he had 4 fouls. And again, that really kind of stunted UCLA's ability to kind of take this game over. Moving forward, I want to see Bilodeau be more disciplined. But again, that's kind of the price you pay when you have to go up against such, Steinbach, for example, where you need to be more physical with him. I thought he played well, 15 points in the second half, 5 for 8 from the field, 3 for 5 from the 3-point line. But overall, right on schedule for Tyler Bilodeau. 24 minutes, again, huge point per minute kind of stat there. I don't know the exact numbers, but still it was good. On the bench, we didn't really see much. Jamerson played 13 minutes. Brandon Williams played 18. Jamar Brown played 14. Between them, Jamar Brown scored 2. Brandon Williams scored 1. I really like to see how Brandon Williams was playing in this one. He only had 1 rebound, but I felt like he was really more physical. I know he had his hand on the ball a couple of times on the defensive side of things, but again, it just didn't really convert to anything important. But overall, I thought UCLA did really handle things well in the second half, and it was because of these starters' performances. Bilodeau, obviously, and Trent Perry played great, but they really do need to hammer down on their first half efficiency across the board. It seems like UCLA is picking and choosing what halves they are really going to turn things up. And I thought in this one, it was the second half where they chose to be the better team. If it was more consistent, I would give this a really good game grade. But again, I didn't think they played that well as a whole. Again, this game should have been won by at least 10, 15 points. They're only able to come away with 4 points as a win. Again, better than they did earlier this season. But I don't know. It was just a rough game for UCLA. I can't say I'm ecstatic to watch them play against Michigan, especially after this one. But again, I thought UCLA showed enough to where they could make that game competitive, because we know how UCLA, likes to play to the level of their opponents. And I thought they did that again in this one. But yeah, I'm not that confident looking ahead. They knew they needed to win this game, and they did. Other than that, you can't really complain. A Big Ten win is a Big Ten win. Again, looking ahead, Michigan on next Saturday, so they have a full week to prepare and rest up. I think UCLA will be able to make that game competitive, but still, we need to see more from them, more consistency as a whole. Maybe with that week, we might get Sky Clark. I don't know exactly if that's the best news for UCLA, because, it could really, affect the dynamics of the roster and the lineup as a whole. But anyways, I thought, again, I said what I said. UCLA needs to be more consistent as a whole. I like this game. As a team on the bubble, they needed to win this game. Again, I really hope this kind of moves them up in the bracketology, and we'll see where that kind of has them at. I think right now they are projected to be an 11th seed. But we'll see how that changes again with the Michigan game, Michigan State, things like that. But that's all I have today. I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Ferguson. And as always, fours up and have a good day. Have a good one.